I had a conversation with a friend the other day, and the word spiritual seeker came up. It was something they were going to use for some marketing thing. And I thought this spiritual seeker is such an interesting word. And I said to her, how about spiritual finder? And so my question today is, are you a spiritual seeker or are you a spiritual finder? And is it something you have ever even considered? I think there is a tendency for spiritual seekers to kind of put ourselves in that category, and then we'll be spiritual seekers forever till the end of our lives and never really become a finder, except maybe little glimpses of an experience. And then when that experience is gone, then we are back on the seeking, and looking and working harder at it and meditating more and doing more retreats and more workshops. It seems to be a tendency to get in that lane and just be seeking, 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 and maybe talking about it with friends, but maybe never fully landing and become a finder and then stay there. I'm not saying that when you are a finder that you will never forget who you are and you might still get lost in the world. But there is something about this drive, this seeker drive to look for the next maybe experience or the next expansion, the next, what do they call it? A gamma pop. That's when everything pops. There is a tendency to go for those experiences. And I understand why. I've had a few of them. And honestly, I would love to live there permanently. But somehow that's not how it works. When I had my big pop many, many years ago, when I still lived in Denmark, that seriously put me on the path of a spiritual seeker because I knew something now that I didn't know before. And I was going to get back there. So, yes, I did all the seeking, all the retreats, all the spiritual teachers, the meditations, the this and the that. And there was still some kind of an unrest because I haven't reached the goal yet. And you can see, can you relate to that? And what does it mean? So maybe the other question would be, how do you know when you have become a spiritual finder? And of course, that's another label. It's not like now I'm a spiritual finder, but just to use a word to get out of the seeking mode. Again, I can only speak for myself, and you may have your own very different experiences, which I totally value and respect. We are all so individual. I think for me, there came a time during all this seeking and all the retreats I did that I just got so tired of it. I'd heard it all before so many times. There was still something that had not fully embodied or settled yet, but I just got tired of it. So then I take big breaks, and then there's suddenly something that starts moving again. And it's like, oh, yeah, it's like that deep longing that I've talked about before. So the longing feels like this pulling me back in. It's like, come back, come back. I don't know if that means I'm a seeker or if I'm a finder. It just means that there is a pull to come deeper, to drop in deeper, to come back home and stay there a little longer. Take a little break, rest a little. So when that happens, of course, you cannot not go with that. But I don't know if that's seeking or if it's just enjoying the finding. You see if you can see the difference in that. Because once you're a finder, I would say I was a finder when this big pop happened to me in Denmark, which lasted for months. But it went away. And it was because it was an experience and one of these big pops. They're amazing experiences and we want them again. But that's not really it. It's a beautiful spiritual experience, but it comes and goes, right? So how it settled for me is really when I started recognizing that I am, that it is I. When I say I, it's not Pernilla. It's not an outer experience. It's simply an inner experience that is very subtle at times, very still, very lovely, and it's always there. So I don't need to seek it, but I can choose to go and hang out there more instead of out here. But when we're still on that path of seeking, because we may not have had any experience yet that makes us go, oh, here it is. And then you can just keep coming back there. You don't need to go on a retreat, but you certainly can, to spend a week or 10 days or a month, whatever, just soaking in that. It's lovely. But it's not really seeking, is it? So there is a distinction between seeking when there is a drive that keeps driving you to better yourself, improve yourself, which is a little different than spiritual seeking. It's more trying to improve that separate sense of identity that we still take ourselves to be. And we think we need to better that, improve it, smooth it out, heal it, rise above it, expand beyond it, all these things, right? That's a lot of the drive. And we spend a lot of time and money on that and work. And I would certainly say a lot of it is very, very helpful. So there is absolutely no undermining it or judging it. I've done it myself, and I think it's been fabulous, absolutely fabulous. A lot of people also use psychedelic drugs or plant medicine, and that can be very, very helpful to kind of pop out of the mind where you suddenly see, like, oh, I'm not this mind, I'm not this body. And you start getting in touch with something that you really are instead. And then you have something that you can rest in. I think what happens sometimes is when we go on these plant medicine journeys or other workshop journey, it could be, we become workshop junkies. I admit it, I was one of those because I was so driven, to get somewhere other than here, that I would just go for these things. And it was wonderful. But when it becomes like when you become a junkie and you always want the next and the next and the next, then you have not found what you're looking for. You are still in the seeking mode. And I think it is important to make that distinction. If you are a seeker, or if you are a finder, or if you are ready to stop seeking and just rest in what you have found in one of those experiences or meditations or retreats. If there's something you have found, take a break from the seeking and just let that experience have you. Let yourself just rest back into that. So it's not such hard work because it can become way too much work, and it can be very exhausting and disappointing and overwhelming, that this drive keeps want you to better yourself or to get somewhere. And it can be a huge block on the road. It's like a trick or something. It's not real. It's just one of these outer suggestions, another hypnotic suggestion that tells you you have to keep seeking, you have to keep trying, and you go and you go. But what if this is your experience? What if you would say, no, I will not indulge in that. I will not do another plant medicine to get another opening, to get another insight, to embody this deeper. I will not do that for a day, a week, a month, a year, whatever your situation is. I'm just going to stay here, what I already have experienced. And now I want to make it my own. I want to make it real. I want to practice it. I want to explore it in my own experience and rest in it. And when this drive to do comes up, take a breath and remember, if you chose to not engage with that, remember that. And then again, you start putting your energy in here. And this does not need you to do anything. I would say all the things we have done is to unhook, which I always talk about, so that we have enough energy to place it here. So if you have done a lot of seeking and workshops and medicine and retreats and whatnot, you probably have already unhooked a lot so that you have energy available. And now I want to invite you to bring that energy here. Just take a nice breath and say hello to who you are behind, underneath all this stuff you still think you need to get rid of or change or improve or heal. There is space for that too. Absolutely. There are times when, deep therapy, deep healing for trauma is super, super helpful. And I'm not suggesting that anybody avoids that and makes it a spiritual bypass. That's not what I'm about. But I do want to invite you to come back here and start trusting this that you are. Whatever experience you've had that wants you to have more of it, now turn it back and allow that to show you what it is, what you already are, and that you don't need to do anything to become that. When I think of the work that I have offered for many years, I think, working with people who are seekers, who are trying to heal, who are trying to unhook, is a gift. It's so important. And without that work, I don't know if it's possible to fully let go. I'm not saying it is or isn't. I really don't know. But my sense is that for most people, we do need to do that work. And I have heard some of the bigger spiritual teachers who needed to go back and do that work because there was no wholeness in it. There was still a duality and trying to get rid of this. But when you start allowing it in and seeing it for what it is and giving it whatever it needs, if it needs anything, then do that as a softening and a letting go to give you the energy to come here, to come back here again. But when that work is done sufficiently, then I love also to work with spiritual finders who may still need some help to rest here and trust that and recognize that in themselves. And also, most importantly, be recognized in that. I've had a number of clients for the past year or so who really needed to be seen as that divinity that they are. And for some reason, that comes very natural to me. And I needed that myself many years ago. Every time I really felt seen as the divine that I am, the spark inside, something could relax deeply. And that helped me to recognize myself as that. So I didn't need it out there. And in that resting, there was a lot less need to keep seeking because somebody saw me. I was being witnessed as that, and I could take it in. And that's what I also offer at times, depending on the situation. So it's moving from spiritual seeker to spiritual finder. And what happens when you become a spiritual finder? Well, that depends on what your inner prompts you to do or not do. That is the time when we start trusting it and almost with a vengeance. That's how it's been for me at times. It's like when those old suggestions come in, there's like, no, I want to know this more than anything. And, come hell or high water, as they say, I'm going to stay here. And there's been some intense things happening in my life over the last several years, challenging things, I should say, that want to suggest to me that I need to go and do whatever. And you know what? There is something in me that is just so done with that. It's kind of like if I have to live my life like that, like most people live their lives by working hard and struggling and fighting and arguing and, whatever, I don't want that. It's so crystal clear in me. I don't want that. And with that, I go here and say, no, you show me what is true here. You show me, that is not what is normal. That is not how it is supposed to be from a place of knowing what reality is. That's not how I want to engage in that anymore, ever. I'm done. You show me. And then sometimes there is really a period of waiting and wondering and being tempted to go and do something. But eventually something comes through, sometimes sooner, sometimes later. And of course, it's the later ones that are the challenging ones. But once you have become a finder to a certain extent, you have to acknowledge that. And then there is a giving over the reins. When you are a spiritual seeker, you can hand over the reins and then trust and trust more and trust more. It's not always easy, but the alternative is to go back and become a finder, a seeker, a struggler, a controller, trying to make things happen. And if you're not done with that, then you will go back. So it's a fine line inside where you'll find out, no, I really want to stay here now. I really want to stay here now. And if you need help with that, I do. There's times where like I often say, if I feel there is too much turmoil, I reach out for help. in my meditation group that I'm in. And that's always very helpful. We don't need to do it all on our own. Sometimes we do, and other times we don't. So the invitation today is, if you want to be a finder, a spiritual finder, see what happens if you give up the seeker and give yourself to the one who's already here.